All right, hello. So I thought I'd make a different video, and maybe I'll be able to text box some of this stuff, but I'm not gonna be able to edit, nor am I gonna edit the videos or pictures. But as you can see, I have some pictures, and I might look up some more during the video. But this is basically for anyone who's ever actually read webtoons. I really like webtoons. There is this very amazing webtoon in it called Unordinary. Now, within Unordinary, there Unordinary is a very interesting series, and I'm going to go into more detail within this video. But basically, Unordinary has basically people with superpowers and super abilities within a world. And there's this kid named John who is supposedly is a cripple, meaning that he has no superpowers. And within this world, there's like a very big hierarchy where people kind of bully each other and create power for themselves depending on how powerful their powers are. However, before I go into this, I would like to state a very simple spoiler warning because I am going to go somewhat in detail about this world as well as my defense of John, because both of this will entail spoilers. So if you do not want to watch this video, I would suggest reading the webtoon first, but if you not, that's okay. We're going to continue. So in this world, I'm going to go into MS Paint. This is going to be awful. Let's see if I can do it correctly. So imagine if this world was a pyramid, okay? Now this is not going to be a good drawing, but this will get the point across. Now within this, you have different tiers. Let's just say there's 3. You know what I mean? And I'm going to call it that. Yeah. There's low, right? Low tiers, right? Mid, and then like high and top tiers, right? And of course, within the upper echelon, high, and then there's like a, maybe a top tier possibly up here. You know what I mean? Right. So basically, in this world, there is basically people, right? And everyone in the world, save for very few amounts, very similar to Boku no Hero Academia, I guess, if you want to think of it like that. But they all have powers, superpowers, and they have different abilities. I mean, it's abilities, not powers, but superpowers, but it's abilities. And depending on the ability you have, you are basically ranked from like 1 to 5 or something like that. I don't really remember, or is it 1 to 10? I don't really remember the power scaling, but basically you have low tiers, mid tiers, and then you have high, and then I would count that there's probably top tiers in the world based on what I know. And so within this world, there's this kid named John. So, this kid right here. He acts as though he's a cripple, meaning that not only is he a low tier, he has no powers whatsoever. So he's powerless supposedly. However, it turns out that he is not. And he actually is probably more closer to the top tier status, more so than anything else. Right. Right. This is where John is. Right. Now he doesn't want to be any part of this hierarchy. He's right now on the outside of the hierarchy. Right. Right. Not within this. This is the hierarchy. Right. Right. This is a never mind. Actually, yeah, you understand. This is a hierarchy. He doesn't want to be a part of this hierarchy, so he's outside of it, or he tries to be outside. He doesn't want to be a part of it. However, push comes to shove, he gets bullied all the time as a cripple. They beat on him, they punch him around, they brutally harass him because he's a cripple. Because in this world, if you're a mid tier, even if you're just maybe a mid tier, right, you bully those on the bottom. You bully, right? You bully, right? Right. Similarly, high tiers do it to mid tiers, or high tiers might even do it to low tiers, right? And the low tiers can't do anything about it because they don't have abilities that are powerful enough, right? So if maybe, for example, let's just say, for example, and this is a real thing, and if you read the webtoon, you'll understand. For example, a low tier accidentally bumps into a high tier. This high tier now has the right to just slap him around, punch him around. kick him around. You know what I mean? It's stuff like that. And the reason why exists is because this world works on a hierarchical system, right? Which is the idea is that those on the top are meant to keep the people on high tiers and mid tiers and low tiers all in check to make sure that there is some sort of stability within the hierarchy. And this leads to, of course, as you know, problems with people abusing their power. But on top of that, this is a world where it's strong eats the weak. It is almost, if you can almost imagine, is very similar to social Darwinism. This idea that the strong goes to the top, the weak stays on the bottom, right? And this can be most evidenced when in certain cities, in certain neighborhoods within this world, where it's basically populated by mid tiers, right? Such as um, yeah, low tiers, right? And they're being bullied, they're being attacked by basically mid to maybe like upper middle tier type ability powers. No one tries to help them because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because this hierarchy system is meant to keep those on the bottom, but it's also meant to keep those in the middle and high tiers checked because there's always someone stronger than them on the top that they will have to defer to. And to them, it doesn't matter what happens to low tiers. They are merely just, let's just say, a cog in the wheel. They are a necessary sacrifice to maintain this system, this pyramid. Now, John used to be top of the class in his middle school, right? Because in schools, there's these things known as royals and then the king of the school, which is basically who's the most powerful at this school, and they go on and fight other top tier people from other schools, right? To sort of create this kind of ranking system, right? Where you can have, let me show you. Like, if for example you have basically like, oh, number one, number two, and number three of the school, right? Right? There's maybe a king, right? A king of the school, um, a queen, which is like the female equivalent to a king, sorry, and then like a royal, right? Royals, which are kind of like your right hand man, and then they'll probably take over the king and queen spot after the king and queen leave the school, right? So this happens. So this is something that is hugely ingrained within society. This idea of social hierarchy, top, high, mid, low tiers, and creating of this basically pyramid. John, on the other hand, doesn't want to be any part of this, and because he had obviously problems when he was in middle school, he supposedly abused his power, and I'm arguing that he didn't, and you'll see why, and all sorts of these things. And so he goes to high school, has to skip a year, and he doesn't want to. Then all of a suddenly, dumb over here, Arlo, figures out, oh, Arlo's John's not a cripple, so he basically confronts him, beats him up again, tricks him, then beats him up again, then takes him out, and then when he confronts John, John's like, I've had enough, and beats Arlo and becomes the king, the secret king of basically his new school, the high school that John is now going to. Now, within this, this is where I think the argument I'm going to make is going to be very clear now. What basically John does is he is extremely brutal, as you can see here. This is him in middle school time. He was so brutal in his middle school that the authorities had to come over and like take him out, right? And imagine that to a society where people get to beat on each other. But he was extremely brutal and he beat people up, and then he kept beating them up and up and up and up and up, right? And then he also creates this new sort of hierarchical system within his high school where jokers now exist, which is basically people are anonymous and they can attack each other. I am defending both his brutality and the idea of an anarchical society within this social hierarchy, and the fact that I think it's fair. So let's start with the defense. I want to defend first and foremost John. I'm going to defend the idea that John for creating basically his new persona of um, of the Joker. So let me kind of explain what happens there. John basically John basically is outed by Arlo, but he doesn't want to assume power. So what does he do? He creates a mask where he's become like this anonymous individual that is taking power from individuals, and And basically, when someone screws around and fucks around with him or someone he cares about, he dons the mask and attacks them. And what this creates is actually a new president within the high school that he's in, because now this in this new high school, a lot of people are starting to basically don the mask to attack people who have wronged them in the past. And usually, and this is where this is the crazy part here. Before, we'll show it in red. It was the high attacking the mid and the mid attacking the low, right? Or the high going down attacking the low. Now, with this new president that he creates, it creates this a sort of fighting back from the low class, which is basically this, where the low class are now attacking the high and middle tiers, maybe even trying to go after the top tiers. You know what I mean? Just people that have been wrong before because of the brutality of the system of of the high tier and the top tiers, basically kind of, you know, attacking attacking the low tiers, and the low tiers get the brunt of this. They just, always get attacked. And so what I'm going to defend is this idea of the anarchical state and why John creating the mask is correct. Because this system inherently is unjust. I don't know if anyone can tell, but inherently this system is wrong. Because what it teaches is basically the idea that these people can abuse their power and attack those on the bottom. And the bottom can never do anything about it, right? Because they have power. And this is the system that has been created within this world. What John's mask allows them to do is to say, hey, you know what? I finally get to fight back. I don't always have to be afraid of the mid and high and the top tiers. I might have a chance now. I might be able to finally say, hey, I've had enough of this system. I don't want to keep being beat up. I don't want to keep getting my lunch money stolen. I don't want to keep getting shit taken from me. I don't want to keep getting beat up, attacked, verbally abused, mentally abused, right? This is what happens to those on the low tier where they have to show in deference, and this happens to mid tiers and so on. And we have to show in deference and we have to bow down to these people because this system is inherently unfair. It says that why we were born, like, because you were born with these powers, you have no real ability to really change the power levels usually. So basically, this system basically says because you were born the way you were, you will be like this for the rest of your goddamn existence. And that your worthless existence and you're a worthless person, and this is what you deserve. And this is inherently wrong. We in our society, right? And I don't want to say, we're going to use societal norms, right? We strive, right, in a society to create more for equality and fairness, right? We don't wouldn't want a huge social hierarchy in the way that is based purely on, race or skin color, right? We've said those things are wrong. Similarly, we don't want to create similarly in this world, a social hierarchy based only on power and abilities is wrong. In the same way, why you shouldn't create, and sorry if I didn't say that correctly, same way that why in this world racism is wrong, right? Social hierarchies based upon something that you were born with, such as race and your skin color, is wrong, right? And so this is why I think his mass is so important, because this allows the people down here to rebel against a society that even if they were to peacefully protest, even if they don't do anything wrong, even if they say, hey, can you not do this to me? You know what happens? They get beat on, and beat on. Because this happens throughout the story as well, right? As I said, the neighborhood of those low tiers, they just want to be left alone, right? They want to be left alone. Yet when push comes to shove, what happens? Mid tiers attack them, right? This is even the case of them trying to like protest and fight back, which they should be protesting civil disobedience. This is a unjust society, but it's to the point where they're not even doing anything, and they're still being attacked by people who barely basically feel as though they have a superficial advantage for having just barely a slightly more powerful power, slightly higher tier. And this is a society that is both wrong and disgusting. Now, in terms of this, I think that would be my argument there, why I believe the social anarchy and anarchical case is good. right? And for many people, they would argue, why would you want anarchy? Anarchy is basically leading to the anarchy is basically leading to chaos within the school where the whole entire social hierarchy is crumbling. And I say this: why would you want this social hierarchy in the first place, right? Shouldn't you want this social hierarchy to not exist anymore, right? Why would you want a social hierarchy such as this to exist, where you can allow for abuse of power against people, where rather than saying, hey, let's all agree on this set of moral standards where we treat each other fairly and we treat each other correctly, even if you're stronger than someone, even though you have more money than someone, even though you have maybe different skin color than someone, that we would treat each other with the fairness and respect that should be allowed to human beings. This system doesn't allow that. The system says we're gonna keep this in power and we're gonna make sure it's in power. And as far as I'm concerned, this is right, and this is disgusting. Because what this leads to is an abuse of power and people that will basically take this system and take it to the extremes, right? And this is why I enjoy that the mask is around. I enjoy this anarchy because it is putting those in the top echelons of power. These people here who have never had to fear being ridiculed, attacked, and always living in fear to now understand, hey, maybe living as a low tier kind of sucks, and maybe getting attacked all the time for no goddamn reason. Or, I mean, they have reasons to be attacked as they attack these people, but for no reason is not right. Maybe it'll put that into their minds for a second, right? And that the peaceful solution hasn't occurred because anyone who's ever done a peaceful solution, even within um, the story, either it hasn't worked, where for example before John came along there was a high school kid who tried to create basically a fair and just basically system that was just there was no hierarchy in this way of ability power. That didn't really work out. It was gone once Arlo came into power. Or Remy, who claims, we got to go through peaceful methods and we got to treat people nice, when in reality when in reality she hasn't done anything for her whole life, and she claims she wants to do all this stuff, but she hasn't tried to fight the low tier mindset. She hasn't tried to fight the mid tier high set. She even herself basically has this sort of like, um, I'm a high tier. I gotta treat these people out of sympathy, which is not what you should be doing. You should be treating them out of empathy and saying, hey, this system is just wrong in general. We should tear the system down. But she doesn't. She doesn't even try to do that. And she never even tries to fight the system until John comes along and has his mask, right? Which is the very reason why I think the mask is so important. This mask right here is the reason why now people are fighting to basically, where people are now reconsidering how they're treating low tiers and say, hey, maybe we shouldn't treat low tiers like this. Right? Remy didn't really care much about it, and she didn't care about this situation until John came out with this mask here. So that's why the mask is important. That's why I defend the anarchy and the mask and him using the mask for anarchical reasons. All right. Now we're gonna go into now I'm gonna go into my other defense, which is basically the defense that John being extremely brutal towards people is in fact fair and just, right? Which is this idea that he basically goes supposedly beyond the pale and many of the people's standards within New Boston and attacking people, punching them. Like he'll basically, this person looks at him funny and they talk shit about him and kind of slap him a little bit. He goes right in and he goes bah bah bah, and not only does he beat them down. Right? Usually the high tiers will kind of stop because they get bored. He doesn't. He keeps beating on them, beating on them, beating on them, beating on them, breaking bones, breaking whatever, making them bleed, kicking them to the concrete, breaking the concrete, causing them to bleed all over the place until they're in the hospital, almost maybe, possibly, he won't kill them per se, but he's very close to that. And I'm going to defend his actions because at the end of the day, his actions are justified under this hierarchy, right? And I'll explain why. Whereas, and I'm going back to the triangle again so people kind of understand. I know this is not a very good triangle, but all right, so let me just get this ready. Da, da, da. All right, so I don't need to put the top tier anymore, but you kind of get high and top are very similar. Top is maybe like up here. All right, John would be up here. Okay, John is up here, right? We'll just kind of put an arrow where John is. and we're going to explain it in terms of the system. In terms of the system of Unordinary, people on the top are meant to keep those on the bottom of them in check, right? The top tiers themselves as well, and all sorts of things, right? And the same will be said here, and the same will be said here. You know what I mean? It just, it's all the same. The goal is to keep social stability in order because you need someone there to be as a supposed role model or someone on the top to make sure none of the stuff goes wrong with both the high tiers and the mid tiers, right? You got to keep them in check. Now, what does this lead to, this hierarchy? It leads to one of the biggest things, and this is truly what will happen if you have a hierarchy such as itself, is abuse of power, right? Where people will abuse their power, that they're extremely powerful, right? Especially these two classes, especially this class in general. This class in general will abuse their power the most, and they will abuse it on the basically on the tiers below, right? Let me put that in a different color so that it's easier to understand what I'm talking about, right? Right, abuse of power. That isn't right, right? I mean, that's not right. I'm sorry, not saying that's right, not right. Right? For us, we would say that's not right. But in terms of this, in this story, in this universe, in Unordinary, this is the gold standard. If anything, this hierarchy is correct to allow this, that the abuse of power to occur. Because as long as basically a semblance of social order is created and kept by creating this hierarchy here, right? Sorry. This hierarchy here, right? Let me just kind of right here, right? The hierarchy here, making sure that no one tries to rebel, that the higher tiers don't try to do any sort of crazy stuff, that whoever is on the top has to be the one to do that. And to them, as long as some semblance of social order is correct, that you can abuse your power all you want. So if you want one day to go beat up some low tiers, go for it. Go for it. It doesn't matter as long as you're not trying to shake up this hierarchy, trying to destroy this social order, right? Because at the end of the day, you're not trying to destroy this order. You're keeping the order because you're keeping the lower tiers on the bottom, the proletariat, the the underclass, right? If we can create some more analogous terms so people understand. This is the type of hierarchy that is created through this. And at the end of the day, if we take this system to its extreme of what it really is just whoever's the most powerful is at the top, right? Right, and he is probably one of the most powerful people at his school. So at the end of the day, under this system, abuse of power is not only encouraged, it is applauded, because if you can show your power, show that you are more powerful, you get to go up in life, right? And you have to show your power in order to keep those on the bottom in line, all the way to the bottom. Excuse me, all the way to the bottom, right? At the end of the day, these lower bottom people can't deal with the mid tier. So you know what's the right thing to do? We gotta keep this sort of hierarchy. It's okay if they get abused sometimes, the low tiers, as long as the mid tiers aren't overtly attacking them. Right. And so in this system, the person who has the most powerful ability gets to stay in power, and they get to dictate the rules, basically, because this is the type of system that will be created under a social hierarchy that is based purely on power only, or the power of your ability in this case, right? Oops, sorry. And so by the standards that have been created by basically this system that is created in Unordinary, what John has done is only natural. And his over brutality doesn't mean jack diddly shit. His over brutality is correct. Is correct under this system. Because under this system, whoever is on the top dictates the rules. Right? If you're on the top, no one can talk shit to you. No one can go against you because you just beat them up. So if you wanted to be overly brutal, punch people, hit people, break their bones, kick them around, put them in the hospital, maybe even kill them, that's fine. Because this system applauds that. This system in Unordinary applauds the idea of power through ability alone, and that is the right thing to do. Not any of this thing about murder is wrong, stealing is wrong, beating people up is wrong, violence is wrong. No, it's this idea that you have power, therefore you are right. And whoever has the most power is the most correct. So under this system, John is totally justified, if not morally righteous, for using his power to attack those on the bottom of his, because at the end of the day, he's still keeping the order there, but he's just much more brutal about it. And if that's the case, then that is fine, right? And if they want to revolt against him, go for it. But in this system, because he's the strongest, even if you revolt against him, he'll just squash you again. So it doesn't matter. If he can keep his power, and if he can keep his power, no one can rebel against him, and no one can defeat him, then it doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, John can do whatever he wants in this system because he is the most powerful and he is justified, right? And in this system, who holds power is morally righteous. That's my defense of John for his brutal actions. Thank you for listening.